All right, boys and girls, let's take a look at the First Amendment to the Constitution, and really just focus in on the religion aspect and what that means for you now and in the future. Okay, so a couple things, basic ideas about civil rights. Okay, this idea, these enlightened ideas that all American people are created equal, they have certain rights, your civil rights. Are those rights guaranteed to you by the Constitution, and just by virtue of living in the United States? So let's take a look. Again, these rights are relative; they're not absolute. Meaning, you have the right to do as you please for the most part, as long as you don't interfere with the rights of others. So, I always tell kids, my right to do this ends where your face begins. So I can do this all day, okay? But if I come in contact with your face, well then, I just interfered with your rights to not get punched, okay? So your rights are not these absolute rights that have no limits, okay? And again, when we talked about this throughout this entire course, when there's a conflict, the courts, the judicial branch, are going to figure out who is correct or whose civil rights were being violated, looking at the Constitution, looking at state laws, state constitutions, all part of the checks and balances, the separation of powers that we've had for the last, over 200 years from our Constitution. So let's take a look at the First Amendment here, okay? So here is the text of the First Amendment. So Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's what we're going to look at, what that means, and how this applies to you, either in your life now or in the future, okay? So, first off, kids always say, our country is supposed to be this complete separation of no religion at all, and that's not true, okay? I mean, we stand every day for the pledge, one nation under God, in God we trust is in our money. Almost all presidents, swear on the Bible. There's a lot of references to God, but it's a general and kind of generic view, okay? The idea is if you're going to do something for one religion, you have to do it for all religions. So this is where we'll get into kind of the nuts and bolts, but does our government favor religion in general, or just the idea of God? Yes, definitely. Okay. So the Establishment Clause. There's two clauses in the First Amendment religious section. The first one is that Congress cannot establish an official religion in the United States. So, I use this guy here as the example. There's a satirical religion called the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And it's not a real religion. It's kind of making fun of religions. And this guy here went to the Arizona DMV with a colander, like we're to strain spaghetti, on his head. And, of course, they told him to take it off. He said, no, this is violating my First Amendment religious rights. Even this guy is an atheist, and his religion is kind of making fun of religions. Long story short, as you can see the picture, he was allowed to wear a colander on his head. Just like if you went in wearing a hijab or a yarmulke or had other religious headgear, if they're going to allow one, they have to allow them all. So if you want to, I guess you can wear a colander on your head if you so desire. The First Amendment does grant you that right. So some other things with this, okay. The Free Exercise Clause. So you have the Establishment Clause, they can't have an official religion, and then the Exercise Clause, where you have the right to practice your faith up to a point. Now, we did this Supreme Court simulation about the Santeria religion and animal sacrifice. There are limits. So, I always point to the poster in my room of Bob Marley, Rastafarians, the medicinal and religious, spiritual aspect of smoking marijuana. No, you cannot say this is my religion. I get to smoke marijuana. I get to have human sacrifice. I get to officially marry 15 women or men. So it's up to a point. Okay. And this whole idea, again, of not favoring one religion over the other, is this idea that really got put into our public vocabulary from Thomas Jefferson, the separation of church and state. Again, making sure that they're not intertwined so tightly that it infringes on your rights to practice or your rights to not practice your religion. Okay. Now, religious activity in schools is kind of tricky. Okay. And I'm going to go over some broad guidelines on this. Okay. So we looked at it in a court case. Can religious activity happen at school in clubs? The short answer, yes. Beloit Memorial has fellowship with Christian athletes as long as it meets these 4 guidelines. Okay, 1, it's voluntary. You can't be forced to join a Christian, Muslim, Hindu club at your school. Okay, has to be voluntary. Has to be student initiated. So fellowship of Christian athletes. There is a staff member that is the advisor, but it's student led. It's not disruptive. Okay, they're not getting too wild. They're not, hurting the educational process at school because it's outside of the school day. Okay, they meet at 7 a.m. Okay, they're not doing this, during prep time during the school day. So basically, if you want a club that's religious based, it can happen at public school as long as those 4 guidelines are met. Okay, so again, your overarching as students, okay, you do have the right to pray as long as you're not disrupting others or infringing on their rights. Okay, you can't force someone to pray, obviously. And again, schools cannot organize religious activities. So we'll look at this a little bit. Prayer over the loudspeaker, coaches having team prayers in the locker rooms. This is where it kind of gets a little sticky. But overall, generally, if you're going to follow your religion, you can do that as long as it's not disrupting others. Okay. Another issue that's been in the news, not as much lately, this whole debate between evolution and creation. Pretty much public schools cannot teach creationism. So that is the story generally found in the book of Genesis in the Bible. Schools can allow students to kind of opt out. And again, parents usually have that option. If something that the school is teaching goes against your religious belief, you can always opt out. And most of the time, kids who know their religious identity know what they should be opting out for. So as far as our school goes, it's all presented on evolution. Okay. Some other things, seasonal displays. Generally, the government itself does not put up nativity scenes. Okay. Public citizens can do this if they get a permit. Okay. Now, again, there's the difference between a nativity scene with Jesus, Mary, and Joseph versus Santa. One is clearly religious. One has been kind of secularized. So again, I always mention to kids, if you go up to the state capitol around in December, there's a menorah. For Hanukkah, they have a nativity scene. There's a Festivus pole. There's the flying spaghetti monster. There's a Muslim display. There's a Hindu display. Basically, if you're going to allow one, you got to allow all of them. Okay. And another thing in terms of schools and religion is, can schools get public money to religious schools? Can religious schools get public money for their school? Now, there was a Supreme Court case just a couple of years ago, might have been last year. There was a Lutheran school that got public state money for a playground. Okay, and people sued and they said, wait, you're using public money for a religious school. And this test, which goes back to the Supreme Court case referred to as the Lemon test, comes out with these 3 things. Okay, so private schools can use government money if these 3 things are followed. 1, it has to have a secular purpose. So busing, lunching, textbooks, sports, playground equipment. Okay. 2, it cannot promote or hurt a religion. So, you can't make the monkey bars look like a big cross, or you can't have the jungle gym look like a menorah. Okay. And then 3, this is where it gets subjective. You can't have what they refer to as excessive entanglement between the government and the religion. Okay. Trying to keep that separation of church and state. For all 3 of these guidelines, which is referred to as the Lemon Test. So again, has to have a non-religious secular purpose. Cannot promote a specific religion. So if you're getting textbooks, you can't have religious material in there. So if it's a science textbook, it can't have a chapter on God creating the earth. And then just really, again, this entanglement between the state and the religion. So as long as it meets those 3, you're good. And the Supreme Court has reaffirmed this up until even last year. Okay. So again, the government cannot force you to believe any sort of religion. They cannot take away your right to religion. Now we'll look at where it gets gray as we do this article search. And yeah. All right. So First Amendment, freedom of religion. Know your rights. See you guys.